Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I'm joined by Tom Vanderford to talk Ole Miss sports like we always do. This is a Saturday morning tradition outside of football season. And Tom, spring practice is kind of going. What do you think the story is so far of spring practice?
Just the battles that they've had so far between the secondary and the receivers, especially as we were talking before we came on, Amos and Harris. Those have been good, and it's a wonderful thing because, you know, when you look at just the clips I've seen, Harris has made some great catches, and Amos is right there on him. So, I mean, that's good stuff. So.
Yeah, Amos and Harris kind of sounds like a 1970s sitcom to like where, you know, Trey's the one trying to accumulate everything, but Trey Amos is just a little bit different and he stops it from happening. That sitcom, I think we should try and do that maybe.
Oh yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, call it Amos and Harris. There we go. But yeah, that's a good battle. You have some other battles that are happening within spring as well, like the young guys like Caden Lee is getting a lot of meaningful reps. Aiden Williams getting a lot of meaningful reps. The defensive backs outside of Trey Amos, you still have Amorian Walker. You still have Chris Graves, who this is actually an unbelievably important spring for Chris Graves for what it could mean. You have Yam Banks and Key Lawrence and Lewis Moore to go with Trey Washington and John Saunders. There's a lot of bodies in that secondary. So outside of Trey Harris and Trey Amos, there's some pretty big competition that's going on.
Oh, yeah, there definitely is. And the depth is just unbelievable. You know, we're going to be a better team for that competition. But I don't see it, you know, if you're an old Ole Miss fan, I used to say back in the 80s, you know, that our starting 11 on both sides is competitive. It's just we don't have the depth that, you know, the other schools do. Well, we've got that depth now. And there's not going to be a whole lot of fall off from CB 1 and 2 to 3 and 4. And on the safeties either. And that's just a blessing. Combined with that you know, front seven, or however you want to put it, it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, we got Brian Smith on the show tomorrow, and he's actually talking about Cedric Beavers and Raymond Collins, the two JUCOs that Ole Miss signed, who, you know, don't forget about JUCO players in this football season, right? Because they still have a role to play on this Ole Miss team. And you have a situation to where Suntaran Perkins and TJ Dudley, they're going to get moved around a little bit. You've seen videos of both of those guys taking some individual reps with the defensive linemen, but they're also doing some linebacker type stuff. And then you have like Pupal, who I think is going to be the quarterback of the defense.
Me too.
And you know, Raymond Collins, we just talked about that there. You have TJ Dudley, you have Suntaran Perkins, and you have a linebacker room that has a chance to be better than it's been probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years probably.
Exactly. And a defensive line room that's got a chance to be the best in many, many, many moons. Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts to think about, but 15 years ago was the Houston Nutt Cotton Bowl second team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Probably also the last time that Ole Miss was up around number 5 in the country, honestly.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the spring football is going to be a lot of fun. There's still, you know, 6 to 10 practices. I don't know exactly what the number is. The spring game's the 13th. So there's probably 7 more if you count this morning's practice, which, by the way, this afternoon we're going to have John Macon Gillespie from the Grove Report with his version of the practice report as we continue to go through the Ole Miss beat reporters to talk about what they are seeing. That should be a lot of fun for everyone. But Tom, today is Matt Corral Day in the UFL for the Birmingham Stallions. Matt Corral he'll have his professional debut at quarterback because he was recently named QB1 with the Birmingham Stallions, which means, and this is a really cool thing for me, every Ole Miss quarterback since Chad Kelly has played professional football, like played games in professional football.
That's correct. And that's a good precedent to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only thing is like John Rice Plumlee is probably going to be in an NFL camp in the fall. He had a couple of starts, but he's not eligible yet. And the quarterback after Matt Corral is really Jackson Dart. And that's interesting. That's 10 years of quarterbacks playing professional football. And is Birmingham your team? Are you a DC Defenders fan for the games today? Is it a Jordan Ta'amu or a Matt Corral type thing? That's like the 2018 quarterback room, honestly.
Yeah, and I was zipping through Twitter earlier today, and they actually play against each other in April.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's only 8 teams in the UFL, which I think is absolutely stupid, because the hardest part in these startup leagues that and MLS and everybody has dealt with it, but it was getting to about 16 to 18 teams. That's kind of the magic number to where you can start stabilizing and get value for your product. Well, when the XFL and the USFL merged, I just assumed 8 teams and 8 teams. That's going to end up being 16 overall, and they would kind of be there. And then lo and behold, those jokers just cut them in half, and they're right back in the same boat they've always been.
Yeah, it's going to take a while, I think. They've got to nurture the league, but I like it because it gives me football in the spring, and I'm not jonesing all year long. It's almost like you can have football all year long now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure when it happens, but it's going to likely happen to where Birmingham plays Memphis, which means Matt Corral is going to have a game in the Liberty Bowl sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. He's overcome a lot of adversity, a lot of personal issues, and I can't wait to watch him play. He's a competitor. He's a great athlete. I think he just got a raw deal in Carolina. I really do.
Yeah, for lack of it's one of those Ricky Bobby type things. All due respect, is like the Carolina Panthers are a dumpster fire of a program right now.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just there's not a lot you can do. I'm going to pay attention to the Birmingham Stallions. I am, as if anybody that's watched the show for a long period of time, a lifelong Tampa Bay Bandits fan. But there are no Tampa Bay Bandits at the moment, so I have to find a UFL team. So it's probably going to be the Birmingham Stallions.
Yeah, it surprised me that they didn't, consume the Tampa Bay franchise as well. But that doesn't mean that they won't expand in years to come if they can just get their product stabilized.
Yeah, it's a situation where I expect the Bandits to come back at some point. But the Memphis Showboats, the Michigan Panthers, and the Birmingham Stallions, those were all hub cities within the USFL. So a stadium deal was already done and in place. And then the rest of the XFL teams, the Houston Roughnecks, they got brought over, but they're essentially the same team they're the Houston Gamblers. They're the USFL team, but the branding came over because they already had a stadium deal and stuff like that.
It's kind of weird how all that worked out, but I'm just glad we have football. I'm glad we got some Rebels to get a chance to play football, and I just really enjoy it anytime. It's weird. I grew up a Miami Dolphin fan forever. And then, of course, when Eli went to the Giants and Stackhouse and all those folks, I started rooting for the Giants. And when Deuce was in New Orleans, the Saints. But now I'm just a fan of Rebels and the pros.
Yeah. And in Birmingham, you have Matt Corral and DeMarquise Gates.
Yep.
In Michigan, you have Breland Speaks.
All right.
In St. Louis, you have Jacour Pearson.
Yep.
And in DC, you have Jordan Ta'amu.
That is correct.
So those are your Rebels in the UFL. They get kicked off today with 2 games today and 2 games tomorrow. And games are going to be on like Fox and ABC. Those are the 2 families and networks. So FS1, ESPN, that's where you can likely find who's playing. So I'm looking forward to seeing the graphics, the calling, everything. I'm looking forward to all of that stuff and to seeing what the UFL can actually do.
Hey, me too, man. Me too. I just don't know how to explain how excited I am about what's coming up in football. It's amazing.
Yeah, we've got 4 months to go down that road, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Tom Vanderford joined us for his weekly segment that he always does on Ole Miss Sports, and I'm going to enjoy some football today, and I recommend that everybody else does it too. Actually, Detroit Tigers are playing the White Sox again today, so I'll do that as well. And Ole Miss baseball. I'll do Ole Miss baseball. Busy sports day is my point.
Yes, sir. Lots of fun for everybody to have, and I hope everybody has a wonderful Easter and hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.